Hi everyone, welcome back. I'm Michael Sandler, your host on Inspire Nation. If you've ever wanted to use super spy skills for persuasion and for life, then do we have the Agent of Influence show for you. Today I'll be talking with Jason Hanson, former CIA officer, security specialist, winner of Shark Tank, the best-selling author of Spy Secrets That Can Save Your Life, and the author of a brilliant page burner on the power of persuasion, Agent of Influence. And that's just what I want to talk with him about today, about how to use super spy skills to persuade anyone, stay safe, and improve your life. That, plus we'll talk about the power of jaw droppers, 7-Up and Alka-Seltzer, TSA and tactical pens, spy baristas and Starbucks, the duct tape escape, and what in the world picking locks and Rachel Ray has to do with anything. So welcome to the show, Jason. Are you ready to shine?
I am. That was the best intro ever, so I love it. I'm good to go.
With a start like that, how can you go wrong? So, from there, before we dive into things, how does an introvert end up in the CIA?
He doesn't want to have a real job in life. He happens to be born and raised just outside of Washington, D.C., and so he can't figure out what he wants to do with his life, and he needs a job, and so he ends up at the agency.
You had, however, been in law enforcement before that.
That is correct, yeah. So I was applying for pretty much any job out there, meaning, CIA, Secret Service, police departments. I was graduating college, again, needed a job, and a local police department offered me a job, so I took it. I wasn't with them very long, and then shortly after, the CIA and the Secret Service offered me a job, and I figured the agency would probably be a little more exciting, so I went that route.
Very cool. You probably figured good bennies to boot.
Can't beat the government benefits, which is, of course, one of the things I miss now, being that I'm self-employed.
That makes sense. Now, were your parents supportive?
It's funny. So my parents were, but they weren't supportive when I left the agency. So my mom died of cancer many years ago, but my dad and I used to get together and have Sunday dinner. And so I said, hey, Dad, I want to go start my own company. I'm leaving the agency. And I don't remember the exact words out of his mouth, but it was something like, I'm stupid and I've lost my mind because I'm about to give up my top secret security clearance. But of course, I didn't listen to him. I left, and it worked out very well for me.
So, we can go several directions with this. Before we go maybe to top secret security clearance, of which you don't have to be in the agency to still have that, you had gone through the ringer, something we're going to talk about later on, and really had paid your dues. So to leave after doing that, I can see where he's coming from.
Yeah, it's not easy whatsoever. So I think it took me about 12 months to go through the full clearance process to get my TS clearance to get the job. So you obviously have to have a background check. You fill out a mountain of paperwork, and I hate paperwork, but you're filling out, everywhere you've ever lived, people you've talked to, foreign contacts, all that. Then, of course, you have to get a medical exam. You have to get a polygraph. You have to meet with a psychiatrist or psychologist. I always get them confused, but, meet with one of them, and they ask you a million different questions to make sure you're not a nut job. Then you take like a 600-person quiz to make sure you're not a nut job. So it is a very in-depth process.
So I've got to ask, and it's interesting. I've had one dear friend from the agency who gave me many years ago a Maserati. Really cool. I bought a Porsche years before that from an FBI agent. What's going on here, and what's the psychological profile of a spy?
Well, I'm thinking, how in the world are you getting a Maserati and a Porsche and all that? The psychological profile of a spy. It's the exact opposite of what you think, meaning it's not James Bond. It's not some guy driving down, a European street in a fancy car shooting up things. Yeah. It is somebody who is very empathetic, who can read other people well, who has patience, and pretty much who can sell ice to an Eskimo, meaning they can be a chameleon. So you're comfortable talking to people who may be billionaires, but you're also talking to the homeless guy. So you've got to be comfortable in a wide variety of situations.
Sounds like my job.
Yes, true.
So what scared you the most when you entered the CIA?
That is a great question. I think, you obviously go through very tough training at the place known as the farm. And I'd worked so hard to get in there. I passed everything. And I think everybody's fear is not passing the training, meaning getting kicked out for one reason. And unfortunately, I did know some people that happened to, but that would have been my worst nightmare. So there was no way I was going to fail any of the training.
Awesome. And so let's bust a few myths here. Did you really need to say goodbye to your family and friends in your whole life and have basically yourself wiped out of existence?
No, and no, and no. So yes, that is an absolute myth. So you can tell very close people to you, meaning, mom and dad, brothers and sisters,
Yeah.
as long as you can trust them and they're not going to tell anybody else. But clearly, you're not going to tell some guy you met in fifth grade who you don't know very well. So yes, you can tell people. You're not that isolated as the movies may make it seem like you are.
And is there really a super secret hush hush phone number where your family can get a hold of you in most situations?
That is a great question. And when you ask great questions like that I'm not going to answer, you're going to see me buy time and get a strange face. So perhaps there is and perhaps there isn't.
All right, so then that leads perfectly into this next question. What's the most dangerous thing you can talk about that you experience where I'd live to tell the tale?
I only had to draw my gun on one occasion. I wasn't in any super, super crazy scenarios because in the spy world, if you end up in some, crazy James Bond movie scenario, that means something has gone horribly wrong. Ideally, spies are going to blend in. They're going to look like the most boring, innocuous people. That way they don't draw any attention to yourself. So if you're drawing attention, it's not ideal.
It's interesting. I know other people in the spy world who are exceptionally good at reading people. It seems like that's the most important skill. Do you feel more secure or less secure about the world and your personal safety after coming out of the agency?
I actually feel more secure because A, I have the skills to protect myself, protect my family. I use these spy level tactics on a weekly basis. But also, I know that we've got amazing men and women in the agency who are protecting our country. I mean, they really are the best at what they do. They're extremely patriotic. So I'm glad they're on my side.
Very, very cool. So what made you say after 7 years in there? It's interesting. We had on Rick Carlgard, the Forbes publisher, not many years ago. We had him on just a couple months ago. He was talking about often our frontal lobe, the part of ourselves that really helps guide ourselves, gives us self-agency, may not even come online until our late 20s or into our mid-30s. You'd been trying to find yourself and saying, well, they were willing to give me a job. Now, 7 years in, I think all of a sudden the light bulb's going off and you may have had an idea of where you wanted to go, what you wanted to do. Was that the case?
Yeah, so I was rather young when I joined the agency. I was 23 years old.
Yeah.
And I came to found out it's a single man's game. So I was very fortunate to have some amazing mentors, some great people at the CIA. But a lot of these guys were divorced. They never saw their wives, they never saw their kids, or they had horrible relationships with their kids. So I look down 30 years from now, and of course, it's an amazing place to work. They treat you very well, and I love the agency. But I realized that would probably be me 30 years from now. I might not be married, or if I was, I'd be divorced. And so I left. Now I have 4.5 kids because I'm about to have another kid. So I'm married with.
Did you know her before you left?
No, interestingly enough, I was working a lot of Sundays, and the very first Sunday, I was able to go back to church. I met my wife at church. We didn't hit it off initially. We didn't like each other for a bit, but after 3 months, I asked her out on a date, and the rest is history.
Woohoo! Was it difficult transitioning back to civilian life?
It was more so the paranoia, and I'll just tell you one example, and anybody that's been in the military is probably going to say the same thing, is suspect packages. IEDs are obviously very dangerous. So at the time, I was living in Baltimore City, Maryland, which is not the safest city in the world, but I would go jogging and I'd see maybe a black trash bag in the middle of the road, and I'd freak out and run the other way. I'm not as paranoid like that anymore. But other than small things like that, I'm semi-normal now. At least I claim to be.
Very, very good. So why do CIA agents make such great salespeople?
Because the way it works in the CIA, the overall job is obviously to gather intelligence. So you've got to be able to go to a foreign country and recruit somebody to work for you. I'll give you a hypothetical example. Let's say you go over to Russia. Yeah. You are looking for a guy, you find Boris, and you say, hey, Boris, come and spy for the CIA. It's obviously a lot more in depth than that, but there has to come a day when you're going to pitch him, which is when you're basically going to say, hey, would you like to come and work for the US government? If you are not a good salesman and 100% sure that Boris is going to say yes, the next time you meet with them, there may be guys there to put a bag over your head and kill you or take you to foreign prison. So you have to make sure that the person you're recruiting, that they're falling in love with you, that you're 100% sure you're on board, because if they're not, they could obviously put your life in jeopardy.
So, and that brings the next question. What does treason have to do with sales?
Well, as one of my favorite lines, and this is not, I didn't say it, I can't claim it, even though it's great, is a fellow CIA officer said something along the lines of, spies are the world's best salesmen. The only difference is you sell vacuums, we sell treason. And that's 100% right, because when you're going to a foreign country trying to recruit somebody, whether it's a Russian, Chinese, any country in the nation, you are asking them to commit treason.
So it's really life or death sales.
Correct, which is why I use the same exact thing now in the businesses I run. The cycle is called the SADR cycle, and it stands for spotting, assessing, developing, and recruiting. The only difference is in the business world, if you screw up, you might lose a contract, you might lose a deal. So it's not that big of a problem. Whereas in the spy world, yeah, it can literally be life or death.
So let's go from there, and let's go from SADR. We're gonna unpack that. We're gonna go into detail, but I want to go right now from spyhood to sharkhood. How did you get the idea to be on the Shark Tank?
I wish I could say it was my brilliant idea, but I don't watch that much TV, and I had a buddy of mine mention this show. So I love entrepreneurship. I love growing companies, and they said, "Hey, there's this show, called Shark Tank." And so I started watching it, I looked at it, and I was very apprehensive because it goes against, my wanting to be in the limelight.
Yeah.
So people are like, hey, you're all over, you've been on a ton of TV shows. And I realized it was necessary if I wanted to get my message out, if I wanted to grow my business.
So first off, what was between you and me and the hundreds of thousands listening, not between them, what's your goal or what I call a mission statement?
My goal is that I run a company called Spies Innovation. So it teaches people spy skills that can save their life. And we have been very fortunate to train a lot of people whose lives have been saved by the training I've given them. But at the time, I was doing a lot of corporate work, and I realized that I needed to reach the masses. I also realized my background is the CIA. I didn't go to Harvard. I didn't get an MBA. I'm not like the world's best, brightest businessman. So
disputable.
I wanted to
very disputable. I'm going to defend you here.
I've learned a lot in my, 2000, my 9 years since leaving the agency. I've learned a ton. I've had many mentors. But in the beginning, I had to figure out how to run a business because that was not my background. So I figured if I went on Shark Tank, I could partner with one of these sharks who obviously was very wealthy and knew things in business that I didn't know.
And because they have their skin in the game, they're going to do everything in their power to help you succeed or they lose their money. So
correct. So they had their skin and they had the reputation. So two things that they cared about.
Awesome. So as you're going on it or before you're going on it, how are the odds stacked against you?
The odds are terrible. So I have a unique business. Obviously, it's a spy training business. A lot of the deals were products, so physical products. A lot of them were food related. But I am very persistent, meaning I watched every episode of Shark Tank. I read every book any of the sharks had ever written. I watched every TV interview they'd done. I wrote down every question they ever asked, so I knew what kind of questions they asked. I practiced my pitch literally over 1,000 times. So I would walk around my house practicing my pitch, and my wife got to know it, of course, because she heard it over and over. So I'd be walking around the house, and she'd chime in, and I'd be like, stop doing that. You're screwing me up. So I put in immense research before going on.
And I think this is huge for people to hear, that if you really want to succeed, I'm going to go back to that phrase, put your skin in the game. Study, 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 go deeper, take it all in from every aspect you can, and then role play and play it out and play it out. It's great that you have your wife to do that with you.
Yeah, I mean, the spy world, as I said, is the business world. There's not a lot of differences, minus the threat level of death. But if you're going to recruit somebody in a foreign country, you're going to know them better than they know themselves. You're going to know what gyms they go to, what kind of scotch they like, if they have mistresses, what habits they like. You're going to try and find out everything on this individual. Well, there's no difference when I was going on Shark Tank. I wanted to know what can make them tick. I wanted to know their hot buttons. I wanted to know what not to say, because obviously on Shark Tank, you see those guys who just get brutalized when they're on there. And that, I didn't want that to be me. So I know what not to say that would tick them off. So yeah, it was deep, deep research.
Why did you get so interested in Damon John?
Because I did my research, and I'm not going to name the guy, but we had someone in common.
Yeah.
And he had a marketing guy he worked with. And I tried to work with this marketing guy years ago. I was not able to work with him, but he sent me a very complimentary email.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not naming him because he asked not to be named.
Yeah.
But you always want to find a connection. In the spy world, we call it a warm introduction. And a warm introduction simply means if I was trying to recruit you, instead of going straight to you and pitching you, I would go find who your best friend was or who you worked out with at the gym. I would join that gym, become best friends with that guy, and then that would be my warm introduction to you. So I knew that this marketing guy would be my warm introduction to Damon, and that would be obviously an easy way to close the deal.
And so then how did it's in essence vetting. You got vetted by somebody so that the door is already open and you don't have to go pounding on the door like a salesperson. What happened then when you went on the tank?
So they obviously boil it down to about 10 minutes of time.
Yeah.
And of course, you never know how that 10 minutes is going to look, because I was in the tank for about 55 minutes. So almost an hour. And of course, during that hour, sometimes I look brilliant. Sometimes I look like the world's biggest knucklehead.
Yeah.
But what they didn't show is during that hour, I actually had the email that the guy sent me. And so I whip out the email from my suit jacket and I say, Damon, we have this guy in common, so-and-so. Here's an email he sent me. Now, for about 10 seconds after I read that email, Damon leaned forward in his seat and he was actually pitching me. Now, it only lasted 10 seconds because then he realized and he sat back up and he went back to his, gruff, tough exterior.
Yeah.
But then I knew I had a very good chance of hopefully working with him.
Woohoo! And what was the outcome?
So here's the funny outcome. And again, they didn't show this, is Mark Cuban starts asking me a ton of questions.
Yeah.
And Mark Cuban says, all right, Jason, I'm ready to make you an offer. And so he kind of ponders, sits there, there's silence. And Damon jumps in while he's pondering and offers me the deal, but says you got to take it now. And because I didn't want to work with Damon, I accepted his deal. And then right after that, Mark Cuban says to me, it's a good thing you took Damon's deal because I wouldn't have been as generous with you. So
awesome. And it gets to leverage here because I imagine that really helped springboard your business.
Well, absolutely. I mean, Damon has and had a million connections that I didn't have. So he had a PR person. He had a licensing person. He had a marketing, he had a whole team. And I was fortunate that I would go out and his main office is in the Empire State Building. That's where his FUBU company is. So I'm trying to think, was it one or two times? I don't remember how many times, but I'd go out there and sit around this big table and he'd have his entire team and they could say, all right, do this for Jason, do this, do this. So he certainly had the resources of a, I don't know what his company is, but multi-million dollar company. And I was just small potatoes. So I didn't have those resources.
Well, it's awesome that it worked out. Let's go from there because it gets to the term confidence. And so let's talk about the confidence reflex. Specifically, what did you do in training when they dropped you off at 9,000 feet without anything, even a jacket?
So anybody who works for the agency, you're going to have a healthy ego. It's natural. It attracts type A personalities. Same thing with the military, FBI, any law enforcement. So the confidence reflex is basically believing in yourself and saying, hey, if somebody else could do it, then I could do it. And it's a very simple way to look at it. So I'm never going to be in the NBA. I'm never going to dunk a basketball. I'm never going to throw a football in the NFL. But barring anything that requires a physical ability like that, I can do it if somebody else can do it. And so that's what I always tell myself. And that gave me the confidence to do things. But at the same time, which is very important when having confidence, is you've got to still be humble and always be willing to learn from others. So you can never think you know it all. So I was always willing to learn from people, and I'm still willing to learn this day.
There's a researcher out of Stanford, Dr. Carol Dweck, who talks about a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. And it sounds like the agency requires a growth mindset, an ability to say, I don't know how in the world to do this, but I will find a way.
Yes, that's 100% it. I mean, they need people, the agency, who are extremely versatile, extremely resourceful, because nothing works out in life the way you think it is, whether it's in the agency or in your own personal life. So if they drop you off in the middle of nowhere and say, figure it out, and you can't figure it out, you're not going to make it very far. So you've got to be very creative. You've got to be resourceful. Something that jumps to mind is there was a movie called Spy Games with Brad Pitt back in the day and Robert Redford. And Robert Redford basically says to him, I want to see you on that balcony in that apartment within 5 minutes. And Brad Pitt has to go in. He has to talk his way into the apartment. And within 5 minutes, he's having like a cup of tea with the owner. Well, you've got to be creative. You've got to be resourceful. And that's just, that's a movie example, but that's what you got to be able to do in real life.
What time of the year was it when you were dropped off at 9,000 feet? And what did you do for survival as it's getting cold and getting dark?
It's funny what I did for survival, and this is going to sound so goofy, but it was so cold. Mm-hmm. I don't even remember the time of year. It wasn't summer, but it wasn't winter, so whatever fall or. But at that temperature, it was freezing. I mean, you're cold as could be. I did a lot of jumping jacks because I couldn't sleep. Yeah. So it would be 3 a.m. and it was so cold and I was shaking so bad that I would get up probably every 10 minutes and do a bunch of jumping jacks just to stay warm. So it was a completely miserable experience. Yeah. But of course, it builds character. It makes you tougher and you realize you can survive everything.
Awesome. So then tell us, what's the farm? And what, other than getting dropped off at 9,000 feet, what are the kind of exercises that trainees go through?
So the farm is the top secret CIA facility. Obviously can't tell you where it is, but it's where spies go through all types of training. It might be shooting. It might be evasive driving. It might be how to use any of the kind of spy gadgets. So you're there, depending on what you're going to do, for a very long time. And again, the time is classified. But it's where you have instructors who are the best at what they do, and they're basically helping you learn spycraft, tradecraft.
Is it more of an effort to help you and to cultivate that growth mindset, to cultivate that confidence muscle, or is it to shake out like 8 or 9 out of 10 of you, and the one who has the confidence remains?
Well, it's absolutely a bit of both. I mean, it's kind of like a military boot camp. So they want to push you because if you can't make it in a controlled training environment, they're obviously not going to send you overseas where you could die. So it's not easy by any means, and they certainly want to weed out the weak. But at the same time, they are helping you. They are trying to train you because the CIA already put a ton of money behind you to get you there in the first place. So they don't want to lose you if they can help it.
So I guess that begets the next question. How dangerous was it?
Well, I mean, training is, it's controlled mostly. I wouldn't say it's dangerous. I mean, I would say it's intense. I'd say they do very good mock training scenarios to get your blood pumping. Yeah. But as far as, like death defying or whatever, at least in my personal experience, nothing like that.
Very good. So you talk about, there are many different stories. There's actually a common thread throughout this whole book, Agent of Influence. But maybe you can tell us a little bit about the story of Tyler and a training exercise, because this was fascinating. The amount of presence, awareness, attention to detail, and the confidence to say, I'm just going to jump into this thing, step back, look, and jump in was profound.
Yeah, so there are a lot of training exercises where you may just get a note that says, hey, you have to be at this location at 4:35 p.m. and the location is 100 miles away. And that goes into the resourcefulness of figuring out how to do it. These training exercises are so intense because if you fail them, adios, you're done. You've worked hard to get in there. So you've really got to trust your gut, but at the same time, you have to take that leap of faith. So if you're looking for someone who's supposed to pass you a message, you're being very observant, detail-oriented, and saying, does it look like this person or does it look like this person? So it's a mind drainer, meaning it takes intense mental stamina, which is why you've got to have the confidence to believe in yourself that you can accomplish it.
Is it also confidence with a word that you used earlier, humbleness? You talk about, and we forgive you for laughing when this took place. You talk about having to do push-ups and God knows what other exercises, calisthenics, until you break. And there's a big, burly, strong man who cracked when there's a woman, a tiny woman doing burpees, who's focused and controlled.
I can 100% tell you that, of course, it has nothing to do with how strong you are, has nothing to do with big your muscles. It is all mental. It is 100% mental. And I've got buddies who are Navy SEALs who will tell you the same thing when they went through the Navy SEAL training is, the scrawny guy who you think is going to wash out in the first week can make it because he's tougher mentally than everybody. So I am certainly not the world's biggest guy. I'm not the fastest guy. I'm not the strongest. But I literally told myself before I went to the farm, they will take me out in a body bag. That is the only way I'm leaving this place because I worked too hard to get there. And fortunately for me, I've always had mental toughness, just part of my DNA, so I'm lucky. But yeah, I saw like the young girl you mentioned. She was a short redhead, and she made it, whereas tough guys didn't.
So that makes total sense to me. And I'm thinking to myself as a little scrawny guy now, we're episode 1,100, and I think this will be 40 in a row that
Wow.
we've done.
That's amazing. I mean, that's incredible.
Thank you. And you just hang in there. This year we're working on some programming shifts. It's family time. It's time to do some other stuff. But I took an ultra endurance background and put it to this show and put it to the business world and said, come heck or high water, we will find a way over, around, through, or under. What's the confidence reflex and how do we start to cultivate this?
It's challenging yourself. It's getting out of your comfort zone. I mean, so many of us live in our comfort zones every day. And I try and do bizarre things. Like in the middle of winter, for no reason at all, when it was snowing, I decided to go for a long walk in shorts and a T-shirt at 6 a.m. So it's just testing yourself. Taking a cold shower now and then, or even intermittent fasting where you're going to skip a meal. So we are so blessed to live in a society where, look at us, we're on Skype right now, having a conversation in nice, comfortable, climate-controlled areas. So I'll use the word weak is that we become very weak as a society. So I force myself to do things that aren't necessarily comfortable. That way I'm always challenging myself and I don't get too comfortable.
Very, very good. And that has to do, going back to the number of shows we've done, going back to you saying, I'm going to find a way to be successful. Follow through is a big part of the game, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. I mean, in the business world that I'm now in, is you've got to follow through to get somebody to work with you or do a joint venture. Or if you're trying to, because I work with a lot of billionaires and high net worth individuals. And if you're wanting to get their attention, you've got to follow through again and again and again. So, I always laugh when somebody is trying to work with me because after being on Shark Tank, I get pitched a lot, but I'll get one email or something and then they give up. And maybe a while later through a connection, they're like, well, Jason, I sent you that email. I'm like, you only sent me one email. Come on now. So, I appreciate persistence and I want to see it. And most people don't have it.
What does off the X mean?
All right. So getting off the X is simply a term for getting out of the danger zone. Meaning, I'll give you an example. If you were coming at me right now with a knife and you were going to stab me, if I just stood still, you would obviously stab me. But if I run or move to the left or the right, that's getting off the X. So same thing. If you're in a car and somebody tries to come up to your car and carjack you, if you just freeze, that is the X. But if you step on the gas pedal, whether you're going forwards, backwards, whatever, movement saves lives and you're getting off the X. So it's a military / law enforcement term.
It has a lot to do. It's a very profound term. If we think about life and thinking about being like stagnant, like in a stagnant pond, we don't necessarily need to know which direction to go, and we don't have to jump forward. But if we start taking movement in any direction, it gets the energy flowing. It's going to change the outcome.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, after leaving the agency, running businesses, because I run multiple businesses, it has its ebbs and flows. So sometimes you have some great years and sometimes you have some rougher years. And when bad things happen, you just got to keep trucking. You just got to keep moving. So if you sit there and you don't move and you just feel sorry for yourself, well, not good things are going to happen. But if you take any sort of movement, eventually you're going to find where you're supposed to be going. You're going to zigzag your way to success.
So here's another philosophy. I did a long time ago, the ultra endurance side of me, 5,000-mile, 40-day solo unsupported bike ride across the country, 120, 25 miles a day. And each day something went, quote, wrong. And for the first 10 or so days, I'm going, that's it, I'm not going to make it. But I kept going until after the 10th day, everything went wrong every day again. But my mindset switched. And you say that problems are not feared, they are handled.
Well, first of all, you should have been a spy with the level of endurance and stamina you have. But you know what? I look at it, because I've been through some incredibly tough challenges in my life. It makes you tougher, and I'm glad, because most people would not be able to make it.
Yeah.
A guy I know says, like, and this is a business quote, because he's in business. He says, if it were easy, everybody would be rich. So when I'm going through a trial, and whatever it may be, I'm like, good, this is making me tougher, and I know that most people would give up. So I'm kind of glad for it.
Excellent. So what do you mean spies back into a solution? Spies back into a solution if necessary.
Well, I mean, there's nothing is going to look perfect. Nothing is going to be, great. Nothing is going to be ideal. So if you were supposed to meet somebody in a certain way, you were going to have a certain disguise, and maybe you get followed out with surveillance, maybe you can't do a meeting. Maybe you have to do what's called a foot toss or a card toss. Card toss simply means throwing a dead drop out of there. So
back up. What's a dead drop?
Okay, so a dead drop is if you're trying to communicate between you and your asset.
Okay.
A dead drop could be, and I'll just use a
asset
goofy
is the
one.
person that you're trying, your mark, the person you're trying to connect
Yes.
with.
Yes, please interrupt me when I use the CIA lingo.
I'll catch you.
So yeah, a dead drop is a way to pass messages.
Yeah.
And a goofy example is if I took a note and wrote something important on it and I put it inside of a soda can and I went through the soda can in a park, that would be the dead drop. So you would go to the park, pick up a soda can, which had my secret message in it. Now, a card toss simply means instead of like walking in a park and putting down my soda can, I would be driving and just toss it out of my car to whatever location it's supposed to be.
Very, very cool. So, all right, going from there, since we're talking about soda cans and parks, maybe you can tell us about a fellow agent, a thermos, 7-Up, Alka-Seltzer, and water-soluble paper.
Yeah, so this is one of my buddies. This is a great story from one of my CIA buddies, one of my good friends. So he would carry a thermos with him when he was going, meeting with assets and recruiting him. And this was a special double-walled thermos. Yeah. And so he would, put his fillet around the outside with Alka-Seltzer tablets, with Sprite, whatever. And on the inside, he could have his special notes or whatever. Now, it was a glass-walled thermos. So if he ever thought he was being followed or about to be arrested, obviously you don't want to get arrested and have a thermos full of top secret information. That would not be good for him. Well, his plan was, if he ever thought something was going to happen, he was just going to throw the thermos down, and it was water-soluble paper. So the Sprite, the Alka-Seltzer tablets, it was going to vanish very quickly. Well, one day he thought he was being followed by two men, and he was sure of it. So he tosses that thermos, destroys all the evidence, and it turned out they were not after him. They were actually after somebody else. But in the spy world, it is better to be safe than sorry.
Very cool. So let's go from the spy world and go to the business world. And we're going to talk about the SADR cycle. I kind of asked you this a little bit before, but why are spies so great at business?
Because they have patience. They are willing to do deep, deep research on everybody. And they will not give up. The guy we just mentioned, my buddy who smashed the bottle with Alka-Seltzer, he is one of the most persistent guys in the world, and I love working with him. We still work together because I know that he'll never give up. He will never let me down, and he'll always find a way.
Excellent. So let's dive into SADR, spotting, assessing, developing, and recruiting. First off, take us through spotting.
So spotting is you need to find somebody who has what you want. In the spy world, if you have a requirement that says, hey, we're looking for a Russian scientist who has access to biological weapons, you need to go spot all the Russian scientists who have access to that.
Yeah.
In the business world, if I say, and it's something simple like, hey, I'm trying to run Facebook ads, and I want to find the best in the world to run Facebook ads, you've got to go out there and network, you've got to do research, and you want to spot maybe the 10 best guys out there who could run Facebook ads. So spotting is just doing a lot of research, finding who may have what you are trying to get.
And then from spotting, let's go to the next one, assessing.
Assessing. So you have a list of guys or gals that may be perfect to work with. It could be a list of 5, 10, 20, whatever the number may be. You need to assess these people and see, do they truly have what you think they have? So if you've got 10 Russian scientists, after you assess them, you might find out that 2 of the 10 are the ones that actually have the keys to the kingdom, quote unquote. In the business world, you may assess these people and find out, I really don't like this guy. I don't like this girl. They're not who I thought they were. And you may assess them and narrow it down to 2 people who actually are people that you want to work with and who you believe could really help your company or help you.
Very, very cool. Is there such a thing in the spy world as a super secret handshake?
There might be signals. There might be things like that. Things out in the public domain are, chalk marks on a mailbox, or putting a thumbtack in a bench is a signal. Challenge words. So code words, where I come up and it's corny, but I say, hey, isn't it a beautiful night? And if you're the legit guy, you're going to say, it is, but I'm hoping to go sailing in my boat tomorrow, or something goofy like that. So there are things like that.
And then in the business world, what's the importance of a signature handshake?
Well, in a handshake, you want to leave an impression, meaning if you're an event, and this is obviously for a physical event, maybe you're at a conference, maybe you're at a meeting, and you're really trying to leave an impression, you want to have a special handshake they're not going to forget. Because the way most of us operate is we're so busy that you quickly shake their hand, you forget their name 10 seconds later, and that's it. But you really want to grasp them a certain way. You want to look them in the eye. You want to say, Joe or Ron or Mike or Sally, it is really great to meet you. Because most people are not taking that time and putting in that type of effort.
How long can we look them in the eye?
It's obviously a fine line. It's not going to be any longer than normal, meaning you're not going to sit there for 10 seconds like some creepy weirdo. You're going to sit there for 2 to 3 seconds, but you're really going to look them in the eye and say, hey, I really appreciate you teaching me this, or giving me your book, or I appreciate your speech. I got a lot of valuable intelligence out of it.
Awesome. So that leads into, we're going to stay with this section for just a little bit, matching and mirroring, something I had to learn how to do for the show, something I had to learn to do for other areas of life earlier on, a particularly great spy skill, but also important for building relationships. What can you tell us about it?
Yeah, so I train a lot of salesmen these days, and when it comes to matching and mirroring, most everybody gets it wrong. They make it obvious, so, hey, if the guy I'm trying to sell starts scratching his back, I'll scratch my back.
Oh, God.
Or, hey, if he itches his nose, I'm going to itch my nose. Matching and mirroring has to be rather authentic, and it's not about the exact movements they're doing. It's about the body vibes they're sending out. Meaning, if they appear nervous and they're tapping their feet and they're uncomfortable, you can appear nervous by maybe tapping your finger and also appearing uncomfortable. If they're like super excited sitting up in their chair, clearly you don't want to be slouching. You want to match their energy. So it's more about matching their energy and how they're feeling than doing the exact same body motion.
If somebody is tapping and I start tapping, whoops, I just started tapping on something, I'm then actually going to take it one more piece. I'm going to go matching, I'm going to go mirroring, and then I'm going to go shifting, which is to try to be the biggest tugboat in the room, not out of ego, but to start to very gradually slow my breathing down and give them cues that I am friend, not foe.
Correct. Like I said, you should have been a spy. So when you first meet them, if they're super nervous, you don't want to come off super relaxed, energetic, and all that, because you'll be on 2 different levels. But if they're sitting there calm and they're maybe low in voice, nervous, low in voice, you come off nervous, low in voice, but yes, you try and transition to them to get them to a more comfortable area. Because clearly you don't want to have them be nervous the entire time.
Yeah. Which takes us to creating a bridge. What's that mean?
So creating a bridge can simply be a way for them to be more comfortable for you. So it can be, what do we all talk about? We all talk about our wives, kids, husbands, whatever hobbies we like. So you want to make sure that you find commonalities. And one of the best ways to do that is give to get. And give to get means, instead of me peppering them with a bunch of questions, I will make a remark first,
Yep.
such as, oh yeah, I'm taking my kids to the park later today, or, my wife, this and that. So if I volunteer about my kids, they may say, oh yeah, I've got 4 kids too,
Yep.
or I this and that. So I'm volunteering information to make them want to be comfortable with me and volunteer information back.
How would you talk about a few keywords. How would you use that? Is that exactly what you're talking about here?
I mean, keywords again are first, what did they say? Meaning I'm paying attention.
Yeah.
So I'm really watching, are they using things like I feel? So I can say, you know what, I feel, and I can do that back, not in a corny way again. It's authentic. Because one of the most important things in the world when it comes to spying is finding a person's hot button. And I'll ask you right now, what do you think the number one reason that people betray their country and spy for the U.S. is?
That's a good question. Why do people betray their country? Because there's got to be a high level of discontent, pain. There's a pain point going on.
Correct. But what do they want? Like, what do you want from the U.S.? Like, if you come and spy,
Yeah.
obviously you want something out of it. What do you want out of it?
So if you're asking me not if I'm going to betray the U.S., but if I want to work for the U.S., why would I want to
Correct.
work?
Right. You're some Russian guy, and
Okay.
obviously, if I'm recruiting you, you're going to want to get something out of it.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you think most people want?
Well, I guess it depends on what their driver is, and so I'm going to give you 2 answers, which is not fair to say, but I'm going to go for it. It's my show. So one is you might want financial security, a better life for your family. The alternative is that you actually want to improve the world, and you may not be happy with how your country is acting, and you actually are doing it for very positive reasons that you feel are going to be altruistic, help the world.
And you're pretty darn close. I mean, with that second one, helping the world.
Mm-hmm.
So when an American betrays the U.S.,
Mm-hmm.
they almost always do it for money.
Yeah.
They're just greedy and they want cold hard cash. But a lot of times when somebody else from a foreign country wants to work with us,
Mm-hmm.
it's because they want to be able to provide a better education for their children.
Cool.
So think about it as a parent. If you are living in some dumpy third world country, your kid has no opportunities, and you might have the opportunity to come to the U.S. and they could go to a real university. I mean, that's just the world. So when I'm working with people and getting to know them, I'm finding out what is their true hot button. Is it the version of a better education for their children? Is it money? Is it lifestyle where they want to work from home and have more time off? So all of us have those hot buttons, and that's what I'm really trying to find so I can use it in the conversation.
And that gets us into our recruitment and making them an offer that can't be refused.
Yes, recruiting. So there does have to come a day where you have to basically come out and say, hey, Bob, I really don't work for XYZ manufacturing in America. I work for the U.S. government. Mm-hmm. And you, of course, would not do that until you're 100% sure they're going to say yes. And you only do that after they have fallen so much in love with you. Now, recruiting in the business world isn't as dangerous. It doesn't have to take as long, but I'm going to make them an offer they can't refuse based on what their hot button is. So I'm not going to go out and say, oh, you're going to make $100,000 a year and you can buy a Maserati and whatever. I'm going to say, listen, you only have to work 4 hours a day. You get to spend more time with your children at home. You can choose the 4 hours. It's very flexible. You're going to get these benefits. So I'm 100% going to hone that pitch as I'm recruiting them to exactly what they want to hear.
Are you going to also use a little bit of hard to get?
Yeah, well, yes, it depends. It depends on how much I need that person. Mm-hmm. I almost always try and use what I call the takeaway and hard to get. Yeah. And, the takeaway in a nutshell means in the spy world, like, hey, I've got this big money full of envelope, or this big envelope full of money. We would like you to work for the U.S., but we understand if you don't want it, and I can go take this back and put it in my safe, and you don't have to get it. That's the takeaway. Now, of course, the takeaway in the sales world, the business world is, listen, I would love for you to have this, but there's also 3 other people who I'm getting ready to talk to. So if you don't let me know by tomorrow, I totally understand. I get it. I'll go talk to those 3 other people. So, I'm always about the takeaway.
Isn't human nature screwy?
Well, again, whether you're in the spy world or the business world, human psychology does not change. Yeah. It's not going to change for the next 1,000 years. Well, it's funny. So one of the things I do is I do human lie detection. So I teach people, how to detect lies. And one of the ways you can do it is by asking somebody a question. I'm going to do it on you right now. Tell me the last time you stole something.
Ski market, as best I know, 1980. No. It might have been. No, it wasn't. It was like a bike shop spring sale. They've got all their stuff there that they've got marked down, and I slipped a pair of pedals. And I'm sorry, universe, but I did.
So I can tell you're being honest. I can tell you're telling the truth, because what I always do is I ask people a question that's more uncomfortable, such as, tell me the last time you stole something.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me the last time you did drugs.
Yeah.
Honest
okay,
people.
I've got to go back around. When's the last time you stole something?
The last time I stole something was probably in 6th grade. I stole a Snickers bar from the grocery store. So when I was in like 6th grade, I went through a klepto phase where I would steal candy. And I also stole a cigarette lighter to burn things. But since then, thankfully, I have not done horrible things.
Did you enjoy the Snickers?
I still love Snickers to this day, but I now buy them.
All right, going back at it.
So the reason I ask people that question is honest people have a quick answer, meaning, hey, I did this or I did that, and they don't look nervous in the face.
Yeah.
So I ask people these questions, and you can tell a lot from the first 3 to 5 seconds of the response. Mm-hmm. I'll give you a true story. When I was interviewing somebody for my company, because I say everybody this, I say, tell me last time you stole something. Most people are like, hey, when I was in elementary school, I stole this, or in high school, I stole this. We're all human. But I had a young woman one time get deer in the headlights, start stuttering, body tenses up, becomes very nervous. And I'm like, hey, don't worry about it. We've all stolen something. And she goes, well, actually, in my last job, I stole a lot of office supplies because I was going to start a competing business, but I decided not to start that business. So I now need a job, and that's why I'm here.
Wow.
I did not hire that woman.
But you got to give her kudos for being honest with you.
Right, after I drew it out of her because I could see the deer in the headlights.
Yeah.
So I'll tell you very quickly, because you mentioned dating. That's how I went down this rabbit hole. Mm-hmm. Is when I was single with the agency, I was dating. And unfortunately, when you're single with the agency, you can't go out and be like, hey, baby, I work for the CIA. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
So, you just pick some job, I'm in marketing or something boring they're not going to ask a lot of questions about. But when I was in the dating world, I would ask girls, tell me the last time you slashed a boyfriend's car.
Oh, my God.
Car tires. Yeah. And so I'd always ask that. Most girls would immediately laugh and say, oh, never. They think it was funny. True story. I had a girl once pause, get nervous, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what did you do? And she says, well, I never slashed his tires, but I keyed his car when he made me mad once. I did not date that girl long term.
Do not make her angry. All right, so let's shift gears from there, and let's talk about extreme preparation. And maybe this gets into dating. What's a bug bag?
So a bug out bag is being prepared for whatever comes out your way. And I have in my car, I have in my house. So it's going to have 3 days of food and water. Mm-hmm. It's going to have a water filter. It's going to have knives and first aid kits. It's going to have all kinds of stuff. As I mentioned, I've got 4 kids, so we have these in the back of the car. And of course, we usually end up using the first aid kits or using napkins or whatever. So life is very unpredictable. You never know what's going to happen, but have a bug out bag in your car, because if you get stranded, it just makes life a heck of a lot easier.
Last summer we had just moved just outside Aspen, Colorado. We're watching 4th of July. There was a smoldering brush fire in the distance. We stayed home. We're watching an Adam Sandler fire movie on TV. We see the fire crest the ridge in front of the house. And my wife yells, shut off the TV, go. And we're like, wow, I'm just about to cry. We had a bug out bag, but we had to get the cats packed up. We started getting the reverse 911 calls, be prepared to move. It was a massive forest fire, made it 1.5 miles from the house. And that was touch or go that evening. But I can see the benefit of having your bag ready to go.
Yeah, I have fortunately never been in a situation like that. But I'm a firm believer in being able to evacuate my house in 10 minutes or less.
Wow.
So if heaven forbid I had to, not only do I have bug out bags, but I have bins, like the bins you buy at Home Depot or whatever.
Yep.
And I have those packed with emergency supplies that I'll need. So I can be out of here 10 minutes, throw them in the back of our Suburban and take off, and hopefully I'll never use it.
So, and in our case, we do have some of the bins, but the big question that I had never thought of is, what do I do with all of my computer gear, my hard drives, all of that, which sometimes these situations get you thinking for a very positive outcome because they help you not just be more prepared, but more efficient with your systems and less cluttered.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm a huge believer of being a minimalist. So I know that sounds like a contradiction because I've got all this gear. So I do have my survival gear. But other than that, I don't have a lot of stuff. I don't buy a lot of junk or a lot of toys. And, speaking of your hard drives and computer, it was expensive, but I have a very expensive fireproof safe.
Yeah.
So I keep all of our valuable documents. I keep, birth certificates, all that stuff in there. And it can last, I think it's like a 2-hour burn time, the safe. So yeah, I'm trying to be as prepared as much as possible.
I like it. Well, let's go from there and let's talk about being teachable, which is something that had to save your life more or less in the agency and is incredibly transferable anywhere.
I mean, these days, both in the business world and the security world, I attend conferences. I'm always learning from others. And so I'm willing to go and learn from anybody and everybody because I can tell, after a short time, okay, this guy's full of crap, or whoa, this is something great I didn't know. So I do what I call a lot of testing, meaning I'll go out somewhere and sometimes it doesn't work out, meaning it's a 3-day conference and I'm like, crap, I know everything or this isn't worth it. And I'll just cut it short and come home. But that's how you improve. You've always got to get out there and learn. I read like crazy, so I try and read a book a week. And of course, I have a stack I've got to get through because, one nugget of information can literally change your life. So it may be, if I buy a book, it may be 200 pages of crap, but if 5 pages are amazing, that's worth it for me.
Woohoo! As somebody who reads an occasional book or two. So
Yes.
Let's talk a little bit more about safety. What can you tell us about the number one thing to keep us safe, situational awareness?
So it is very important in the spy world. It is very important now today where, we have all these random kidnappings and carjacking and all. The simplest way I can say it is keeping your head up, meaning when you are walking around, you spot danger ahead of time. If you and I walked out of the mall and some guy was looking to rob us, because criminals, they go to areas that are public, like Walmart parking lot late at night, and they case people coming out. So if you come out of the parking lot and your head is up and you're looking around, and I've got my cell phone and I'm texting and I never look up anywhere, well, obviously I'm the easier victim because I'm never going to see it coming.
Yeah.
So keeping your head up is what keeps you safe in life. And when I'm walking through an airport, a game I like to do is I like to describe people to keep myself in my A game. So I may say 6 foot tall white male, black hat, brown shoes, striped shirt. Looks like a 20-year-old woman, ponytail. So I describe people to me. That way I'm forced to look at my environment and I don't have my head down.
I love it. I play a game where I'm looking at expanding bands of awareness. What's going on right in front of me? What's going on 10 feet out? What's going on 100 feet out? Because it brings me, I say it takes the world from kind of a flat black and white old screen TV to an HD TV because I'm in presence, because I'm looking at all these levels of awareness.
There was a viral video a while back where a guy goes into a bar, and I don't remember where it was, but he robs this bar. So he pulls out a gun. The cashier gives him all the money, and there's this guy sitting on his cell phone right next to him, has no idea this bar is getting robbed. I mean, he's that immersed in what he's doing.
Did it keep him safe?
Well, thankfully, nobody got shot. Nobody got hurt. But, it doesn't always end up that way. So I want to be alert and see if some guy walks in with a gun or, something could happen to me.
What's the greatest gift of safety that your intelligence training gave you?
Something called an SDR. It stands for the Surveillance Detection Route. And it's very easy to use. I'm going to tell you some quick stories. So basically an SDR means if you're going to a meeting with your asset, you're not simply going to get in your car and go straight to that meeting. Mm-hmm. Because if you had somebody following you, you would expose that asset. They could get killed. An SDR means instead of going straight to the meeting, you might go to Starbucks, then you might go to Walmart, then you might go to the gym, then you might go shopping. you're going to all these different places to see if you see the same cars or the same people and over. And obviously, if you do, you would avoid that meeting. Tell you a quick story about how my wife used an SDR in Home Depot. So she calls me once and she says, Jason, I'm being followed. I was out of town at the time.
Yeah.
And she says, I'm in Home Depot. There's this guy following me. I said, well, how do you know? She says, well, I just ran an SDR. She was in, let's say, plumbing, looking at something. This creepy guy comes into plumbing and he just starts staring at her and it really doesn't look like he's shopping. So then she goes to another aisle across the store to look at lumber. Shortly after, the guy shows up in lumber. Then she goes to gardening. Guy shows up in gardening. Then she goes to look at washers and dryers. Yeah. Guy shows up. So what are the chances this guy is going to go to all those same exact aisles that my wife is? Probably not very likely. Since I was out of town, I told her to go get a manager and to have somebody walk her to her car and to run an SDR home. She did exactly that. We never saw the guy again, have no idea who he was, but she was able to quickly ferry out that, yes, indeed, she was being followed.
So if somebody runs an SDR, do we then put ourselves in a public place with somebody like a manager? What's the best protocol?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I had another woman who was in Macy's, the shoe store, or in the shoe department, set up. There's this creepy guy staring at me shoes. So she runs an SDR, went to perfume, went to clothing. Sure enough, the guy followed her everywhere. She went to a security guard, pointed the guy out, and the guy took off running out the door of Macy's. So yeah, go find somebody in authority to walk you to make sure that you're not alone.
Thank you. Let's go from SDRs and creepy guys to what can we learn from Picking Locks and Rachel Ray?
So I've been very blessed to be on the Rachel Ray show, I think 10 or 11 times now. She's awesome. I love her. And so I teach lockpicking. It's one of the things I teach during my spy skills. And she brought me on the show. She had me pick the lock on a filing cabinet. And I will tell you, I was able to do it, but lockpicking doesn't always work the first time. So it's not a good idea to do on TV. Even though I did it and it worked out well, but I would not recommend going on live TV and trying to pick a lock just in case it doesn't work out.
There's something about showing off there. How are you feeling right beforehand as you're going, oh, crap?
Well, the problem is with lockpicking, of course, I'm good at it. I've done it a million times. But again, sometimes it just doesn't work. You may have to do it 3 or 4 or 5 times. So since I'm supposed to be the expert, I was obviously nervous because if I go on there and I can't get this sucker and I have to do it 5 times, it's not going to look very good for TV.
So go from there and tell us, because my wife, Jessica, the producer, she always asks me to ask a question for parents and their kids. You've got 4 kids, soon to be 5 kids. What can you tell us about spy skills and our kids?
So my kids are younger. I had kids later in life. So, I didn't get married until I left the agency and had kids later. So my oldest is 6.
Yep.
So I have a 6-year-old, a 5-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 1-year-old. So a lot of the stuff now is stranger danger type of things. But one of the most important things we do with them is a code word. So we have a special code word. That way, if some guy, rolls up to the bus stop and says, hey, your mommy and daddy told you to get in the car with us. Well, they're supposed to ask the guy, what is the code word? Now, obviously, if the guy doesn't know it, they know to run away. But when you're dealing with kids, you got to make it fun. So what we do is we have something called Family Home Evening every Monday night, and we do activities as a family. And so one of the games they like to play is the code word game because they like me to be the bad guy where I pretend to roll up in my car and say, hey, get in the car. And then they say, well, what's a code word? And I'll say purple, some word that's obviously not it. Yeah. And then they run away and scream and they think it's funny. So make it fun when you're teaching your kids about safety.
Woohoo! And on that note, what personally brings you the greatest happiness, or what I call the woohoo factor?
It's a cliche, but it's my family. Like, people who really know me. Like, I've been blessed to work with the agency. I've been blessed to have very successful business right now. And, like I said, I've dealt with celebrities. I've trained high net worth individuals. But at the end of the day, I know none of that really matters. I mean, it really doesn't. Like, I'm very religious, and God could care less that I trained some celebrity yesterday. He cares about what I did within the 4 walls of my home. So that's what matters. I know, when I meet God one day, that's all he's going to ask me about. So
since we're a spiritual self-help show, I've got to ask, even though it's time to wrap things up, but I'll ask just a few last questions. But since you went there, how did you bring God and spirituality into the agency?
Well, I mean, we all have certain lines we won't cross. We all have things we won't do. So I had a buddy that he would meet people at strip joints,
Mhm.
and he wasn't religious, and he liked to close a lot of deals at strip joints. Hey, that's his personal preference. Me, I don't go to strip joints. So, I'm not going to do that. It goes with, you can be flexible and you can close deals in many different ways. Same thing, I don't drink. So some people drink alcohol, I don't. I never had to drink and I wouldn't drink. So it just, remember that we all have our underlying values.
Yeah.
And for me, they're non-negotiable. And that's just how I've been able to operate.
Did you bring prayer in?
Oh yeah. I pray every night before I go to bed.
Mhm.
I pray every morning. We pray at every meal. And I pray before every big life decision. That's one of the most important things I do. So whether it's, I'll give you an example right now.
Sure.
We are hiring a nanny. So we had a nanny, she moved, and with me working and traveling and my wife about to have 5 kids, I want to get her help. So we're interviewing nannies at this time, and we're going to pray about which nanny we believe we should hire, because we're bringing a woman into our house to be around our children. Of course, I'm going to background check her. Of course, I'm going to ask her the lie detection skills that I use. I'm going to ask her that, but we also pray about it.
That's awesome. We're hiring right now for all sorts of things for our business, and we're going to prayer. In fact, I say, I give it to you, God. I don't have the answer. You let me know which is going to be best. I'm not even pretending to be in charge.
And I think it's very important to remember, you don't always get the answer you want, because
true.
I've had some instances in my life that I got very not good, good answers, but not the answer I was hoping for. But God's smarter than me, so you do what he tells you to do.
We have a process of prayer and writing called automatic writing. You go into prayer and you write, and things tend to come out to you. And there's this person that I have wanted to hire. And I thought the first interview went exceptionally well. Second one, not quite so sure. But I wanted this person. And when I go to prayer, every single time consistently, no, 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 no. On that note, where can people go? We're going to bring them from a no to a yes. Where can people go to find out more and to find your awesome page burner of a book?
Yeah, so obviously I would love them to get my new book. It's Agent of Influence. You can buy it on Amazon or any major bookseller. And then my website is very simple, just spyescape.com. If there's anything I can help people with or anything they need, you can get a hold of me there.
Spyescape.com. And if you didn't catch spyescape.com, come on over to inspirenationshow.com and we'll get you over to spyescape.com. This has been phenomenal, Jason. This has been so much fun. Before I let you go, any last words of wisdom you want to share with people today?
Well, the only last words of wisdom are keep your head up, remember your family, and put down those electronics. It makes life so much simpler and easier.
Woohoo! Thank you so much, Jason. This has been a lot of fun, and I couldn't agree more on the electronics. Particularly, I think everybody needs to go and watch that video of the guy as they're robbing the whole place, and he's busy on his phone.
Exactly. And thank you for having me. I appreciate it. It was fun. And this was one of the more enjoyable interviews, so I love it.
Then I have done my job. I don't need to give you twice your interview back. So for everyone out there, this is Michael Sandler saying, be well, have fun, get Agent of Influence, and begin using your super spy skills today, and shine bright. Woohoo! Thank you so much, Jason.
Thank you. Seriously, you're a great interviewer. Obviously, you've done this once or twice. So it was good. I had fun. I thought it went well.
I hope you enjoyed watching Jason Hanson. To check out more exciting spy skills, check out his video here, subscribe below.